What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. Joining me today, Chris Fedor and Jimmy Watkins, cleveland.com's finest, and we're going into some news. In a very quiet offseason thus far, with the NBA Finals still going on, the Cavs made a move. Instead of departures, they started bringing people on. And today it was Jawad Williams, Cleveland native and someone who went to St. Ed's, was an AP and Gatorade Player of the Year at St. Ed's. And he also was a McDonald's All-American, not to mention that he did end up having a 17-year professional career. And no, I'm not going to keep hyping up Jawad as much as I want to, because we also have a letterman from St. Ed's on the podcast, Mr. Fedor himself, Mr. 300, we might start calling him. Chris, we want to talk about Jawad Williams, but there's a story that you have known Jawad dating back to 2002, 2000? Give us the lowdown. What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, we were only a couple of years apart at St. Ed's. I graduated in 2002. He's a little bit older than me, but we had a class together. And then there was also another moment where we were playing pickup basketball in the basketball gym afterward. And if anybody has ever been to St. Ed's gym, it's not the greatest gym in the world. And at the very back of it, there is a stage, because it doubles as like an auditorium. It doubles as a place where a lot of plays are taking place. So we were playing pickup basketball after school one day, and I kind of knew a lot of the basketball players. Some of them were my camp counselors when I was growing up. Other ones were in my gym class. Other ones, oversaw my intramurals when I was playing those as well. So I had a familiarity with, a number of the basketball players for St. Ed's, and every now and then after school, I would just play pickup and I would just shoot around or whatever. So one time I was playing pickup in the gym, and Jawad was way too good. He was way too good for his age. So look at me, then look at Jawad Williams, who ended up going to North Carolina, who ended up playing in the NBA, who ended up playing professionally overseas. So we're playing pickup, and I go to take a shot, and he swatted my stuff all the way onto he didn't take it easy on me at all. He swatted this basketball on this jump shot all the way onto the stage, like the opposite end of the floor. And then I just kind of walked away with my head down and said, all right, it was nice playing with you guys, but you're way out of my league. And there's a reason why I'm not playing basketball at St. Ed's and I'm on the bowling team instead.
Well, just for reference for people that don't understand, Jawad Williams is 6'9", around 220 pounds. And Chris Fedor, on a good day, is around 5'10", 5'11". So very, very big difference here. All right, now let's get into the basketball talk and why this matters for the Cleveland Cavaliers, bringing him on as part of Kenny Atkinson's staff. Obviously, we know the Cavs lost Jordan Knott, they lost DeMarre Carroll, and they've lost Brian Tebaldi, 3 assistant coaches on Kenny Atkinson's staff, along with Chris Darnell from the Cleveland Charge, the former head coach. 2 opposing teams and the NCAA when we talk about Brian Tebaldi. And so they're bringing in Jawad Williams from Sacramento. Ironically enough, that's exactly where Chris Darnell went. So, Jimmy, when you think about this guy who is getting his, not necessarily his feet wet, but is just a few years into his coaching career after the Sacramento Kings, and also having experience overseas as a coach, what do you think this means for the Cavs and how he's going to impact player development? Because that's been his specialty since he got into the coaching fray.
I just think with a guy of like Jawad's background, that gives you so much currency with players when you can speak from experience. And I mean, what he's teaching, his career is a player development career. That's the story of his career. I mean, he's scrapped and clawed for every minute he got at every level of basketball. Once he left UNC, obviously, um, he scrapped and clawed for every minute of basketball that he played as a pro. And I just think that with that experience comes a ton of respect from current players who understand what it takes to get to that point and all the work that went into it. It obviously gives him a modicum um, of presence with them. I mean, it's not the same thing as having like a multi-year, a decades long veteran in Damari Carroll, but it's still like I just think that former pro, and obviously like everyone who works in basketball has a relationship with the game as a player to a certain extent, right? But it's not a language, but it's just an understanding. I think it's maybe like a different a different tongue of the same language that former pro players will speak, that they understand each other a little bit better. Obviously, Kenny's still making the plan, and Jawad's going to execute it to a certain extent, but it it matters. Kenny clearly believes this because he had Damari Carroll on staff, and he's following that plan again. It matters to have former players on your staff, and with a player development position, a guy who made his career on player development, it fits.
I think it's a fit thing, and we talk so much about fit when it's players, but the coach has to be the right fit too. And just a little bit of background, Kenny Atkinson, obviously, when he lost Jordan Ott and he lost Damari Carroll, and there was some concern or some belief that there was a chance that Johnny Bryant could go to New York. That has quelled since, but as that was all happening, Kenny was making calls and he was doing his due diligence and he was trying to figure out, okay, who would be a good fit in this organization? Who could be an assistant from outside this organization that we can bring here that would allow me to put my trust in him, that could connect with players. And one of the people that Kenny trusts most is Mike Brown. Mike Brown and Kenny worked together in Golden State, obviously. And Mike Brown, I'm told, gave the highest glowing recommendation of Jawad Williams. Now, Mike obviously was in Sacramento at the time that Jawad was brought on that staff as a player development and an assistant coach. But the relationship between Mike Brown and Jawad Williams goes even a little bit deeper than that, because Mike Brown's son is Elijah Brown. Mike Brown's son, Elijah Brown, played at St. Ed's. Jawad Williams, at times, came back to St. Ed's because he still has a very, very close relationship with head coach Eric Flannery at St. Ed's, who helped Jawad win a state championship when he was there, who coached Jawad while he was there at St. Ed's. Eric Flannery and Mike Brown have a close relationship. They always have, and they still do, because Coach Flan coached Elijah Brown, and Mike Brown went to St. Ed's games, and he was around the St. Ed's program when his son was playing at St. Ed's. So this does kind of tie back to St. Ed's through Eric Flannery, with Mike Brown, with Elijah Brown. And because Kenny Atkinson has the relationship with Mike Brown, and he believes in the things that Mike tells him, and he trusts him implicitly, when Mike Brown is going to go to bat for a guy like Jawad, Kenny's going to listen. And Kenny's going to say, hey, that makes sense for me to bring him to our place on our staff, especially because, Mike Brown is no longer the head coach in Sacramento. It's a different coach in Sacramento who wants to build his own staff, who has his own relationships, who probably didn't have the same need for Jawad in Sacramento as the Cavs do for Jawad here in Cleveland. And I do think Jimmy brings up a good point about Damari Carroll, because one of the things that we've talked about on this podcast is, what are the Cavs going to be missing with Jordan Ott departing and Damari Carroll departing? And we said Damari was the one who had the player background. Damari was the one who could speak to players like a former player. And there's just a different way that he was able to communicate with these guys. because he had that particular background. Jawad played with LeBron. That means something. Jawad played for the Cavs. That means something. Jawad played in the NBA. That means something. Jawad also played overseas. That means something. So when you're looking to fill a void that was left behind, Jawad steps into that former player realm where now all of a sudden, when Kenny wants some kind of input from a guy on his staff and he's looking for a former player input, that's going to come from Jawad. So that's something that he certainly brings to the table. And then on top of that, everybody knows Jordan Ott was huge when it came to player development. And it wasn't just here in Cleveland. It's going to Brooklyn, Los Angeles. That's what he's become known for. He's really innovative. He's really smart. He has modern philosophies. But player development is where Jordan Ott separated himself. It's something specifically that the Phoenix Suns pointed out in their press release when they hired Jordan. And the work that he did with Evan Mobley, you can't overlook that. Evan Mobley became a first-time All-Star. He became a second-team All-NBA player. So when you're looking to replace somebody who is well-respected as a player development guy, you've got to find somebody that can step in and fill that void. And that's Jawad Williams. That's how he got his start as a coach. He started in Japan as a player development guy. Then he came to the NBA as a player development guy. And he's going to be a player development / assistant for the Cavs. And he's going to take on a lot of the responsibilities that Jordan Ott had. And I would not be surprised if Jawad becomes the person that oversees the development of Evan Mobley.
That's interesting because when I was thinking about the comparisons between Jawad and the coaching staff that had already departed from the Cleveland Cavaliers, I was thinking of the DeMarre Carroll role and his player development and also his journey from UNC, NBA, overseas, all of these different things, and having the connection as someone who has been dealt with as a fringe player. Obviously, as I mentioned, he played 3 years with the Cleveland Cavaliers. The most games that Jawad Williams ever played in the NBA was 54 in a season. But when we talked about DeMarre Carroll and his role and his stature as a player development coach, as someone that was able to talk with these players to a different level, it felt like that was more of a role that was going to be taken over by Jawad Williams, helping out guys like Craig Porter Jr., Jalen Tyson, people that have the physical abilities, but might not have the opportunities to be successful and continuing to breathe life into those players. Do you think that's also accurate, or you just think, or you're more so of the mindset that Evan Mobley is going to be the guy that he's going to work with? And is there any type of relationship that they would already have that you might know of? Because for me, Kenny Atkinson is the guy who I would think would take a little bit of a heavier hand with Evan Mobley, even though he's more of a point guard guy. Sure, Johnny Bryant handles Donovan, Omar Cook handles Darius Garland. What are your thoughts on that and how Jawad Williams' responsibilities could be divvied up, or do you think he's going to be focused on Evan Mobley?
I think it depends on who else they hire throughout the course of this offseason and if there are other people that they bring from outside this organization to fill out this coaching staff. I think roles are fluid. I think roles are not predetermined necessarily, but you're trying to match like a skill set. You're trying to match a demeanor. You're trying to match a communication style and stuff like that. And as you said, Ethan, Omar Cook is going to keep developing Darius Garland because Omar Cook is one of the best point guards, true point guards that came out of the state of New York from the prep level. And he was one of the best pure point guards that European basketball has ever seen. The work that he has done with Darius, it shows. They've worked on the mental side of the game. They've worked on breaking down pick and rolls and stuff like that. And I think the Cavs want Omar to continue in that particular role. Johnny Bryant's going to continue to work with Donovan Mitchell. So like part of it is there are already relationships built in that are going to continue, that the Cavs want to continue. And Kenny's not going to oversee the development of any single player. He has too much on his plate. Like, yeah, he's going to be a part of it. He's going to get on the court. He's going to contest shots. He's going to simulate pick and rolls. He's going to go through workouts with these guys. But he's going to delegate. He's going to delegate to his assistants because being the head coach of a team with championship aspirations, that is a big, big job. And Kenny is no longer in a situation where he's only a player development guy or he's an assistant coach and he can take on that role, that responsibility. So one of the things that he talked about, even when he took this job, was I've got to delegate. I've got to trust my assistants. And he did that throughout the course of his first year in Cleveland. And I can't see him changing that. I don't think he wants to change that. I don't think he wants to go back to what he was in Brooklyn when he was a little bit too hands-on, when he let a lot of stuff kind of like slip through the cracks because he was too focused in one area. So I don't think there's a situation here where, all of a sudden Jordan Ott leaves and Kenny's like, I'm taking over the Evan Mobley development. I think it's going to be one of these coaches. And I think it could be Jawad. There, to my knowledge, there is not a built-in relationship or a pre-existing relationship between Jawad Williams and Evan Mobley, but he played forward. Like, he's a big man developer. So if you like the fact that Omar Cook and Darius Garland can speak the same language because they played the same position, and Johnny Bryant and Donovan Mitchell speak the same language because of all of the things that they've done throughout the course of their time together, Jawad Williams and Evan Mobley could theoretically speak the same language. There are other guys on this staff that have player development in their background too. Mike Garrity is a possibility to pick up that Evan Mobley thing. They've got the USC connection, I guess. Mike Garrity's been here for a while. He was the player development coach when Darius came into the NBA, and he had a big hand in Darius's early days and Colin Sexton's early days. So I wouldn't rule him out in this equation either. But somebody's going to have to take over the responsibility of overseeing Evan's development. And, from everything that I've been told, a big reason why they hired Jawad is what he did behind the scenes in Sacramento with a couple of their individual players. And there's no reason to think that couldn't theoretically translate to Cleveland.
What we're trying to turn Evan Mobley into here, and where the environment that Jawad's coming from. The Sacramento Kings, they're one of very few teams in the NBA that use their center to initiate so many different, Domantas Sabonis is his usage numbers. It's tricky with some of these guys because, usage rates is a very specific stat, but the amount, Domantas Sabonis, he is the sun around which all of the pieces of the Sacramento Kings offense revolve. The amount of, you don't get credit for the dribble handoff stuff that he does, or the amount of Domantas Sabonis brings the ball up a ton in Sacramento. And whether Jawad Williams worked with Domantas every day or not, just being in that ecosystem, you catch on to what you're doing, to what that team is doing, and you can take some of the concepts that the Kings have used with Sabonis and apply those to Evan Mobley. It's not an apples to apples comparison, but you try stuff with Evan Mobley. What the Cavs are going to be, again, they did it last year, but it's an ongoing process of put more on his plate, see what he can do. And from that perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense, given where Jawad is coming from and where Evan Mobley is in his career, for that to be a match.
I think those are all good points. And I wasn't ruling out Jawad from being an Evan Mobley coach or player development extraordinaire, but I just think his journey is a little bit different than Evan Mobley's. And sometimes that counts for something.
To Chris's point, being able to drop LeBron's name, that carries so much weight. It just does. Even if it's the way you saw LeBron work after a practice or something. How many legendary work ethic stories do we have for all of these legends? You know what I mean? That there's so much cachet. That's what I was saying earlier. It's it's not this. Maybe they don't speak the exact same language. It's the same dialect. They've been in the same. They've been in the same circles. Jawad Williams was not himself the player that Evan Mobley aspires to be, but he knows what it looks like up close every day.
The other thing is Trevor Hendry is another coach on this staff, and he's probably going to move up in terms of responsibilities, but his guy's Jarrett. And if Jarrett comes back, the relationship that Trevor has already established with Jarrett, I would think that the Cavs want to continue those kinds of things if they like the work that Trevor has done with Jarrett, and I see no reason why they wouldn't like the work that Trevor has done with Jarrett. So at some point, you have all these coaches that are already kind of assigned different guys, and you're looking for who it's going to be. I guess it could be Nate Ranking. I guess it could be, like I said, Mike Garrity. But Jawad was brought here for player development purposes. A big reason why Jawad was brought here was for player development purposes. So give him the responsibility and see what happens.
Again, I wasn't saying it wasn't going to happen. I wasn't saying it was a bad idea. I was just telling you guys what I had sent out to our subtexters in thought immediately when the announcement came out about replacing the role of DeMarre Carroll as the bridge between player and coach and that responsibility. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he couldn't be also taking on the player development role as the coach with Evan Mobley or whoever else it may be. Also, just for some context, because we mentioned Japan and his career and all these things, I wanted to get a little bit more specific. On June 1st, 2022, Jawad Williams announced his retirement from professional basketball when he was in Japan. And then in July 2022, he joined a Japanese B-League team as an assistant coach and director of player development in his first stint as a coach with any team. Obviously, then on September 9th, 2024, Williams was hired as an assistant coach and director of player development for the Sacramento Kings. And then he joined Kenny Atkinson's staff for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, again, when I was referencing the fact that he is somewhat new to this, it's been 3 years in the coaching sphere. But again, as we mentioned, he had a 17-year professional playing career on top of playing since however old he was, growing up and going to St. Ed's and then going to UNC. So his resume speaks for itself. And I think it's great that Jawad is getting not only to come home, but also the opportunity to be on a bigger stage. Obviously, Sacramento isn't the biggest and the best team in the Western Conference right now. They're trying to figure some things out. Now you get to come and be on a stage with a 64-win team, the former number one team in the Eastern Conference. You're on a bigger stage. You have better players. You have better organizationally ran things that we can talk about. And I just think it's important for Jawad to take this opportunity and run with it and be able to showcase exactly what Kenny Atkinson and Mike Brown spoke about and believed in, is that he has what it takes to coach at this level, to coach with this team and be able to make an impact, a lasting impact. And Chris, since you know Jawad on a personal level, would you mind to just give a description of him, not as a coach, not as a player, just the person?
Really good dude. I mean, gets along with a lot of different people. That's something that you can look at, going back to St. Ed's, going back to North Carolina. He was part of that championship team for North Carolina, and he was willing to accept a specific kind of role. So he's been a winner basically every stop of his basketball career, whether it was overseas, college, high school, and like that kind of guy. He's the right kind of dude for this organization. When you talk about chemistry, when you talk about the culture that they're trying to build, when you're talking about communicating with young players and old players, doesn't matter what kind of background they have, just a really good dude and very, very personable. And I think he's going to be a good asset to this coaching staff for sure.
With all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs Insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext so you can have your voice heard. This is where you can have daily conversations with me, Chris, and Jimmy. This is where you can get daily texts, whether it be insight, whether it be daily reactions and analysis based on trades going on around the NBA, and all these things directly to your phone. But you can only get that if you sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word stop. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around, because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through some text. Y'all be safe. We out.